Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Maxwell Construction, who has been our sponsor since the very beginning. For over 30 years, Maxwell has delivered the highest quality projects by holding to their core values of customer satisfaction, positive attitude, respect, and excellence. So if you have any kind of commercial construction need, give Maxwell Construction a call today at 812-537-2200. Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and I'm here with my amazing husband, Merrill. Hi, honey.
Hello, Linda. I'm being primed again, guys. This is the start of our shows.
What?
Amazing. What do you need?
What?
You need me to, fix something?
No, you are amazing. You're amazing, but a lot of that is because you have taken steps to protect our relationship and make it amazing.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'd say we both have.
Yeah.
I'd say we both have.
Yeah.
But that's only through a lot of trial and error. So let's not act like we had it right from the get-go.
No, but it is, and it's an important topic that we really want to cover today, because there's a lot of couples out there who have left their relationship unprotected.
Yeah.
Whether they're married, not married yet, living together, they've left their marriage and their relationship unprotected.
And, with saying that, hon, it's not usually with ill intention when they first do it. I mean, it's usually just sort of, it's just a passive thing. They just do it and don't really think about it. And then the next thing you know, doors are opened or opportunities are open that you go, I probably needed to secure that a little bit better.
Yeah. So how do you get healthy boundaries around your relationship to keep it from going off the tracks? Okay. And so there are way too many train wrecks going on around us. Walking in our doors. We'd love for you to start protecting your relationship, even if you're not married yet. So if there's a significant other out there that you're just getting serious with or starting to think about committing to each other, then we want you to listen to today's show and really kind of get preventative in your relationship.
And even if you are already married and you've recognized maybe some patterns or habits that you're thinking, I don't know if this is very healthy. Definitely I would first invite your spouse to hear what we're going to talk about today too, because sometimes when you start looking at things differently or make changes and they don't know why you're doing them, it can kind of throw red flags up. But even if it's just hon, I'll say one thing, you don't have to ask your wife for permission with this. If you've noticed that you have been very lax on how you use your phone as a man, I just check out anything and everything, and it's not that big of a deal. Even without even talking to my wife, I can at least do a better job of watching what I'm doing. So I'm protecting what I'm exposing myself to and these kind of things.
Yeah.
But if we're really talking about how do we protect the marriage, well, it's great to get a marriage protection plan where the two of us come together and say, let's be more intentional about those doors that we want to make sure we have locked. We've talked many times, and we've done this on the Strong Dad show, that men are supposed to be the protectors. And back in the old days, that meant basically having your old double barrel shotgun, 12-gauge shotgun up there by the door. And nowadays, the gun may or may not be necessary.
Maybe.
It depends on the hood you're in. But it also is, man, we are letting the criminal in right through our phone lines and computer lines and all of these kinds of things. And so, and we've seen families devastated by this stuff. So coming together with your spouse and getting a protection plan for the family.
And I loved what you said, have your spouse listen to this show with you, because you're right. You don't want to just surprise, rules have changed and this is what we're going to do differently, because they're not going to understand why. And especially if trust has been broken, this is a great way to rebuild trust, rebuild intimacy with you and your significant other. But let's say that you've already experienced a train wreck, hon, and you've already have a failed relationship where the relationship is over. There was already the train wreck. And now what? And so this show still is for you, because as you keep being in relationships, you want to keep from having another one, right? And so you can do some things differently before you enter into a relationship and really put those boundaries up ahead of time in that new relationship and say, these are things that I didn't have in place before. I know I need them now.
Yeah, it's that protection plan you're talking about. It's like that alarm system, and you can get an alarm system after you've been broken into, and then you go out and you buy your new alarm system, and then you're not quite sure until it gets tested as to whether it actually does work. And so sometimes you have to, there's going to be some breakdowns in relationships, and trust will be broken. And the only way forward with trust building, and it is brutally hard, we're not going to minimize that, but the only way forward is to put together a protection plan and then know that it has to be tested. Yeah. And sometimes couples say, I can't even go there. And we understand that depending on the level of hurt, it's not something you just assume everybody should be able to do easily.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. If you've never been robbed or if you've never had that trust broken, then you don't really see a need. But we're saying it's worth the preventative measures to put these things in place so that when those dangers come and when those things try to seep in, you've already put a boundary up. So, before we go any further, we probably should thank some sponsors.
Let's thank our sponsor. We want to thank Maxwell Construction and Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Radio show. And so, guys, they help us get this message out. Why don't you help them by just visiting their stores or talking to them to do business with? They do great work for our community. So thanks to those guys for helping out, help moving the message. So you may be listening to Rock Solid Radio for the very first time. And if so, welcome. We are so glad you're here. Where you been? We have, was it 4 years, 5 years? We're in our fifth year of doing shows. 52 episodes a year. And so we are faith-based nonprofit. Rock Solid Radio is run by Rock Solid Families, and we are a faith-based coaching organization in Southeast Indiana, Greater Cincinnati, Ohio area. And so we do coaching and speaking and teaching and blogging and podcasting about faith and family and fitness and all those things. And so these podcasts may be something you randomly come across, or they may be a podcast that we've assigned for homework. Maybe you are one of our clients, and as a couple, we have said, this is something you have to watch and listen to and take notes. So if so, welcome. Yeah. Well, and that's what this show is actually about. This is a show that pretty much most of the topics we talk about is because we've been prompted or we are seeing that sort of topic in our office. And so this particular topic here is one that we get more than our share of in our office. And so we felt like it would be very good to have a discussion about, well, how can we be a little bit more on a proactive side to get some education out there, to get our couples thinking about how they can better protect so that in the long run, they won't have to worry about those bad things breaking into their marriage. Yeah. So some of these things you may say like, duh, of course we do these or we need these, but maybe there's some of these things that you're really it's gonna step on some toes and you're gonna push back. And we would just ask, why? Why are you pushing back? So maybe you've already gone down the slippery slope and then you don't know how to reel it back in. Maybe you think you've already do these things. And so to kind of change things would be hard. So we would say, why is this so difficult to put this boundary up? Because we would say, we've seen it. We know these are the healthy things that you've got to put in your relationship to keep it safe. Yeah. A lot of times we trick ourselves into thinking we're really good at managing certain temptations. And because maybe we've not been smacked around by it yet. Maybe we've been able to seem to manage it. We've all heard about the functional alcoholics, and again, like, I'm not saying that everybody who drinks is an alcoholic. In fact, we know many people who drink quite a bit and they do very good. And the point is like, but when is too much? When, do you have to wait for the train to actually wreck before you go, yeah, I've been walking that fine line for a long time and it was just a matter of time. And so these are the kinds of things that it is at least worth some conversation within your marriage to say, well, where are we on this issue? And then it's not Linda and I to determine that you've got the challenge or the problem. It's really you guys to determine, because it's going to take your gumption, your energy to actually apply all of the different things that are going to be necessary to protect your relationship.
Yeah. And some of you may be thinking it's too late, that there's already been a breach in trust. There's already been a betrayal. And so there's some deep, deep wounds. And we've done recently some shows on wounds and storms and things that kind of rock our world and kind of break that trust. And so we would say maybe it's time for some outside biblical counsel, some wise counsel that can come alongside you and help you guide into really some changes and some protection for your relationship moving forward. Because we do want to see it not just survive this storm, but thrive.
Yeah. Sometimes we've done an entire show on the idea that once you become Christian, you should never have problems, right? And we know that that's not true at all, because life is out there and we're mixing up life every day with people who don't necessarily have the same stance on faith. And so not everybody has the idea that they need to live by the way of God's word. And so in Proverbs 27:12, we're even given some fair warning about, hey, you're still going to have some troubles out there. It says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton, that's just an interesting term. I've been called that before. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences.
Those are actually two different translations of the same verse. Right. So one is the NIV, one is the NLT. But, whether you see danger, foresee danger, take refuge, take precautions, like that's what we want to do and help teach you so that you can foresee the danger and really take refuge.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump into them.
Okay, let's do it.
So we've broken this down into 6 significant areas that Linda and I have seen, like, man, if we don't get a little bit more intentional or proactive in these areas, we're probably going to run into some problems. And I think that was a good point that you brought up earlier, Hun. If we hit a nerve with you on this, rather than going to the defensive stance, just take it in. All right, just take it in and think about it and have conversation. At the end of the day, it's not for Linda and I to make any kind of judgment on where you and your partner are in your relationship, but it is worth the conversation between the two of you to figure out what you might want to do with this. So take us off on the first one. Honey.
Yeah, and so first one, and again, I would get a notebook out, or you and your partner, as you listen, write these down.
You know who's writing?
The girls.
9 times out of 10, you ladies just picked up the pen and the notebook. I've seen it in real life.
Golly,
and the guys
so
going,
predictable.
Well, if you want to read it, you should probably write it.
Okay, number 1 is the whole idea of the work-life balance. So how are you doing balancing your work life and your personal life? Because you may be killing it at work, but the people in your own home, around your own table, if you even eat around the table, wonder where they rank, and they feel like they rank somewhere below the dog. And so I'm not just talking about the men either. I'm talking about the women too. There's some women who are out in this workforce now and nothing's going to hold them back, and not being a mom or being a wife, because you can't tell me what to do, and I'm going to make it in this world and I'm going to show you. And so we have kind of overcompensated in some ways, where we've really left our marriage unprotected.
Yeah. And so how would I go about doing that? And I think this is where we talk about this a lot with premarital couples, because if you don't define the value prior to getting married, the values that you're going to build the marriage on, which we've talked about so many times, but this is a perfect example that if you just make the assumption, well, I'm the guy, I got to go out and work, I got to make money, or we're making our way, or, we're trying to build the business or whatever, like all of that is good until it isn't, right? All of it sounds great until you've got some years under you and you can see that, oh my gosh, look at the impact this has had to the negative. And so you really do have to establish the value. And Hun, I'd say probably close to unanimously when we ask, about the values in couples, newly married couples, they'll talk about the importance of building their new family. So it just sounds right to say it.
Right.
But then when you really start to look at the structure and function of the family, and you see that, well, they're just not spending time together, or
they're always tired,
and exhausted, and always stressed. So again, I think it's important to really figure out like the value system, and then does the work-life balance, does it work to address that?
And a lot of times in our 24/7 world, our employers think they have 24-hour access to us, and they feel like they can just dictate how much overtime they expect out of you. And so you may be working for an employer like that. We have couples that come in our office and they don't have an option of overtime. Right. And so or maybe they're on third shift and they want to get off third shift, but they can't. And so at some point, you're going to have to say, what is the most important thing? Because if you're never sleeping together, never eating together, never seeing your spouse, it really is time to reevaluate whether or not it's worth it. Is it worth the cost of your relationship? And so we're asking you to both sit down as a couple and evaluate your time and the balance between work and home. And is it healthy? And I would ask your partner, do you think it's healthy? Because you may think it's fine, but your partner may not like it.
Yeah, you might be going to a job every day that you're really fed well, you're excited, you're motivated, you like it, and your partner's not getting the kind of those pump ups at home. But and we've talked about this before, so it is worth mentioning. Oftentimes, all couples will go through a period or season within the marriage. And so maybe, there's something going on where, gosh, we're trying to build a house and we're trying to do all these things.
Or a big project at work.
We got a big project and you say, hey, can we do 2 months, 3 months? But the two of you need to actually define, this is how long we believe this is last. This is how long we'll be willing to tolerate it. Okay. But it's that thing where it just keeps going. Well, you've said it would get better for the last 3 years, and we continue to be this busy. Something's got to give.
Yeah, we've had clients who they had to be taken out of town for work, and it was supposed to be a couple month project, and it's years later, and that spouse is feeling betrayed, feeling like they almost have an adulteress, over there in another town that is taking priority over their family. So yes, work-life balance is a huge number one.
All right, number 2.
Yeah.
This is going to step on toes right here.
Oh, I'm glad you're saying it, not me.
Number 2. So this is the spouse before the kids. So we talk about the hierarchy of relationships and understanding the actual need to define and start to live that hierarchy out. And so for us as Christians, we believe, and we have to learn and understand, even though it's not comfortable or easy, that God is our number one relationship. And so in this case, more than Linda and I, it's me making sure that I am in a good understanding and relationship with God. Like, in other words, I'm trying to follow his nature and his way. And if I'm trying to do that, and Linda's trying to do that, just by the nature of doing that, the next thing that will come in line is the relationship between husband and wife. Okay. You notice I haven't mentioned kids yet, right? Because kids are going to get the fruit that comes from the relationship between husband and wife, right? And if we shortchange that and try to substitute the kids for one of the spouses, or even worse yet, we've seen kids elevated to the level of God. In other words, that parent just believes that kid walks on the water.
They call the shots.
Yeah. And when it gets to that, we're in a very dangerous place. And so the idea here is being very careful to one, show your spouse that they are a priority above the children, but it also then showing the children that, so that they understand, listen, no one's coming between your mother and I, okay? Yeah. Now, I think you should, though, Hunt, address the idea well, what about babies? What about the 1-year-old?
Yeah, well, and of course, we've talked about the stages of parenting where, 0 to 2, that child needs our service, needs our nurturing. But I also want to bring up the whole idea of blended families, because I'm not naive to think that everybody's doing it in the right order of, God, spouse, children. And sometimes we've gotten them out of order, or maybe there's been a broken up family and they're coming together in 2 different homes. And so, we got to be careful when the children came before the spouse, when the children were already in the family. And so again, it's still so important that we don't elevate a child on a pedestal, because, and that happens a lot. We've talked about this in co-parenting shows, where that really puts a weird dynamic there, that the child feels like they can call the shots and the home is being run by a child or a teenager.
What if we had a two individuals that were divorced. They were raising their kids separately. And while they were separate, maybe the mom was raising her couple of kids and the dad was raising his couple of kids. And in that process, they actually had elevated the status of the kids because maybe that's the only person that they had.
Yeah.
And so then, because by the nature of how their living style is, those kids naturally became elevated to a higher place. When you are trying to blend that family together, you can't just snap your fingers and expect that everybody's going to get
recalibrate.
From now on, it's me and you and the kids are going to be second. You're going to have to bring the entire crew together to get them to learn the new structure. And so we've run into more than our share of couples who have tried to blend kids, and they wonder why the kids are kicking back. And the kids they never did accept me into the home. Well, this takes work, man. And that's why it's not about the idea of how fast we can get married. We have to bring this whole crew together now and let them relearn what the new structure and function of the family is going to be.
That is such an important point that you make there. And I hope that if you are coming from a divorced home or separated from your spouse and you are now dating or whatever, if you have elevated that child and they're sleeping with you and they're calling the shots and they kind of feel like they run the roost as a single parent, then you're going to have a horrible blending.
You're going to have to do it well. Yeah.
Man, you're going to have to do it slow. And we did a whole show on this recently about co-parenting. And so hopefully you listen to that show. But again, spouse is supposed to be before the kids, and that's going to keep that united front and the priority in the home.
Yeah, very good stuff there. Okay, let's move to number 3. And this kind of goes by an old name. We would call it the Billy Graham rule. Okay?
Why do you call it the Billy Graham rule?
So Billy Graham, probably one of the greatest evangelists, definitely within our time, and maybe ever, just in terms of what evangelism really means and the boldness that he had to speak out and go really around the world to talk about Christ. But Billy was extremely not just knowledgeable in his word, but knowledgeable in how Satan works and knowledgeable about temptation. And so he knew that he was a man. He was nothing more than a man. And he knew that people would love to see him fail as a man. And so
the enemy would love to see him fail.
Yeah, and so he had to set some things up. And so this is called the Billy Graham rule, where over time, he realized he had to set up some policies within his organization for himself and the people in his organization so that they could protect themselves. Like we're talking about a marriage protection plan here. He needed just a protection plan for his organization as well as his own marriage. And some of the simple parts with this, and we've seen people laugh at this and go, I think it's a little overkill. But one of them is he never dined alone with a person, a female, someone of the opposite sex, because he just did not want anything to come of that.
Yeah. Or any rumors, any questions, even if he trusted himself and he trusted the other person, just the look of it just did not seem something. And by the way, he's one of the few evangelists that lived his entire life without accusations. A lot of these other TV evangelists or high profile pastors have fallen because they have not followed this I think, very wise rule. And so not dining alone, not traveling alone. Your employer may send you to Texas if you're maybe if you're not even in Texas, but Texas or California with a coworker and you are of the opposite sex and they think it's okay. I need you to push back and say, I don't feel comfortable with that, or I want my wife to go with me. Something along those lines to say that I want to not have anything to question my integrity or to be above reproach. And so traveling, meeting alone with a woman that's not their wife, he just did not want anything to destroy his witness and his ministry.
Yeah. So these are just safeguards, right? And to do that takes humility.
Yeah.
Because, you have to be able to realize these other guys you talk about, these great evangelists that have fallen, all right? It wasn't like they were bad and evil people. It was that Satan doesn't quit knocking on your door, okay? And he can let your pride and your ego and your loneliness or whatever your weakness, he can allow it to creep in. And before you know it, what you thought was a nice, straight, sober thinking mind can get altered, and you get yourself stuck in traps. And so, we cannot know every temptation, but we can certainly start to protect and be thinking about the plans in case temptation comes about.
So number 3 is the Billy Graham rule. Number 4 is the question, who is your best friend? And both of us have had clients come in where they've said that their best friend was somebody other than their spouse. And if it's somebody of the same sex, okay, that's one thing, but there's been people who have said that their best friend was a childhood friend who was somebody of the opposite sex, or a coworker, or a neighbor, and supposedly perfectly platonic, okay? And I'm just telling you, it's not going to stay that way. It's not healthy. It's not safe. It's not wise. You may be thinking it's totally platonic. They're like your little sister, your little brother. But man, if you are emotionally confiding in someone of the opposite sex that is not your spouse, then you are playing with dynamite.
Certain conversations take place in those situations that can be very interesting but misleading. Wow, we seem to laugh more when I talk with this person. I laugh more around you than I laugh with my wife, right? I feel more relaxed when I'm around you. You know, you and we have really deep conversations. I never get to have that kind of conversation with my partner. I just kind of look forward to the next time I get to talk with you. It's these kinds of things that get very intriguing, and they create a little spark or motivation that if you're not careful, the next thing you know, you're going to find yourself wondering why you're with your spouse and why aren't you more with this person you're talking with?
Yeah. So it could be a coworker, it could be a neighbor. We've even seen a little league coach where maybe you're feeling so deprived because your husband's always working and he can't take the kids to the ball games or practices, and your coach, your little child's coach, is so sweet, and he just listens to you, and he may even give you a ride home, or he spends extra time with your son. And so it's just very hard to keep that boundary and that line when you let that emotion come in and kind of blur the lines.
You know, as we talk about this, hon, I mean, we've been married over 35 years. We worked in, both of us have worked in places where there's been, like in my case, I worked with a lot of women in an elementary school.
In my case, in the church, I worked with a lot of men.
Men and women. And so we know that early on, like we did not safeguard like that. I remember one time you came into school and you said, like, every time I come in, I see you talking to women. And I'm like, there's no one else here but women. And so we actually had to really talk about, well, what does this mean for us? How do we go about it in our situation? And so this is not about us being perfect and trying to figure this out. It's really about trying to figure it out. It's like, well, how does it look for us in our work environments? And so don't spend a lot of time like beating yourself up, and certainly we're not asking you to go paranoid. You know, going home and screaming and yelling like, "Oh, we've got to do something." Bring the conversation up and start talking about these things. How about number 5? You ready for number 5?
No secrets. And so we did a whole show recently on secrets. Make a commitment right now that you won't keep your day a secret from your spouse. Or if you're hiding something, that's a huge red flag. And so if you don't want your spouse to know what you've been spending money on, or where you've been, who you were with, you know, those are things that we would say, okay, why? What is the secret so important for? And why are you trying to hide it from your spouse?
I mean, unless you're buying me a birthday present or something like that, right?
You do have a big birthday coming up this summer.
You had to say the big part, didn't you?
You know, not going to mention numbers.
6, just say 6. There is a disclaimer to the secret thing, and this is I want to say this is a major exception to the rule. If there is a situation of abuse within a relationship, and you're starting to get very worried and panicked about, oh my gosh, maybe afraid for your life, maybe afraid for the welfare of the family. Okay. Then at that time, the whole scenario has changed because now we have a different trust issue. And the trust, and Linda and I are trying to ask you to build and maintain strong trust between the two of you. But when that trust is decimated and now there's a potential for abuse, then we have to work to be able to get help outside. And so that might be a time, hon, where you do go talk to other people. You don't tell everything until you get your system set up for protection. So again, I think maybe that's a way out there kind of thing, but maybe not, depending on the situation you're in.
Because statistics tell us that the most dangerous time for an abuse victim or spouse to be hurt is when they leave.
Right.
Or try to leave or say they're going to leave. And
get
so
that plan,
some of that plan might have to happen. So again, that's a disclaimer. We are talking about goodwill people here, that we're trying to build intimacy and regain trust or build trust, protect the relationship. So that's number 5 is no secrets.
All right. Number 6, and we couldn't really talk about this 20 or 30 years ago, but now we do have to talk about the digital safeguards, the internet, the screens, all of these different things that we think of as they're associated with technology. Guys, these are kind of what I was alluding to earlier on when I was talking about the old double-barrel shotgun at the door. Well, now I need something very similar to that at the cable line, at the phone line, at the Ethernet line, whatever is coming into my house, by way of the internet and our phones. We better be a lot more aware of what's happening there, And so it would be, first off, our general rule on phones and these things is, listen, you can look at my phone or my tablet or computer anytime you want. I'll leave it wide open on the desk or the kitchen table. Feel free. Here's all my passwords. Okay, so that openness is extremely important. Multiple accounts, hidden accounts,
burner phones,
hidden passwords. Red flag, red flag, red flag, guys. These are things that are not, they're not healthy, and they are red flags for what's happening behind the scene.
Now, I will tell you, we hear it all the time, is that they're vigilant and they're always questioning and second guessing me. And so that's why I keep my phone protected. And so if you already have had that trust broken, or there's already this level of mistrust, then I would say get some professional help so that you can get back to transparency. Hiding secrets, closing up, hiding your phone, those are all things that tell us something's going on. And so we want to try to regain that trust and build that intimacy back into the relationship.
Yeah. Guys, remember, this is about a safeguarding plan. It's a protection plan. And so it doesn't mean that every little thing that your spouse has ever done in any one of these areas makes them corrupt or anything like that. It means we're just trying to make sure that we're very open, because we've done entire shows on what happens when trust erodes in the relationship. And trust is the glue, okay? And so if I don't have trust in that relationship, whether it's I've lost it in the digital world, I lost it through some affair at work, whatever it is, when trust goes, so goes the relationship. And so we just have to be really sensitive of what that looks like to our marriage.
Just as if you would have a drinking problem, you wouldn't really recommend your spouse going back into the bar over and over and over again. The same with pornography and digital safeguards. If you've had an issue with pornography in the past, then please get some accountability, get some safeguards. Be totally transparent. Don't go behind your wife's back or your spouse's back and having your computer in a door with the door locked, or after they go to bed. I see that a lot. Oh, my wife goes to bed earlier than I do. Well, it's because you stay up to use pornography. And so if it's been a problem, please, this is where we've got to get some help and start to do something different, because you're living in a fantasy world that is eroding the intimacy in your marriage, and it's just not healthy.
And I'm sitting here kind of thinking a little bit about some of the different areas we went through, and sometimes we can spark that paranoia within a relationship. And so, I'm thinking about like money expenditures and things like that. And if you are at a point where like maybe the husband is not going to tell his wife about anything he buys, because as soon as he does, his wife loses her mind. Okay. And so he's afraid to spend $50 or to go have a drink with his buddies or any of that, because if I tell her, she's going to just lose her mind. And so it's just better to not even bring it up. And so that is not as much, I mean, it could be a trust issue, but it's as much of a relationship communication thing where, guys, you have to come together to get some common understanding and allow each other to have that space. Okay. If money and expenditures are a big deal, talk about what we can do and what the two of you agree on. And what the two of you agree on, now we can go, listen, I don't have any reason now to sit there and get on your case because you dropped $50 or $100 or whatever. So again, it's that old thing of, if I would tell you the truth, but if I do and you go crazy on me, I probably won't even go there.
And that's a good point. If ladies, if we're like losing our ever loving mind every time he or she does something that, or he does something that, I told you. If you're banging his head up against the wall about it, then he's not going to be honest with you. But that's when you sit down, like you said, I do have clients who one is a bigger spender than the other, and you got to agree. Okay, we're really going to limit it to $50 or $100 without, talking with each other. Then we got to, anything above that, we make a decision together. Like you got to kind of come to some understanding of what is it going to be that we're going to guard our relationship with.
Yeah. All right. Good jobs here. So let's talk about our homework.
Yeah.
The challenge. Okay.
Before we do.
Oh, wait. And there's more.
But one more thing with digital safeguards that I've seen a lot over the past 10 years, and that is the whole reconnection on social media with old flames or ex-husbands or hidden relationships, no secrets. And so please do not go out and seek an old flame. Do not go out and reach out to your coworker on social media and start this hidden conversation that is more emotional driven, more social driven. It has nothing to do with work. And so that's where the line gets blurry and gets crossed. And so please just make a safeguard, make a commitment with your spouse or your significant other that you're not going to do that. And that way it really does protect that train wreck from happening.
Yeah, very good point. We've seen a lot of that over the years with social media and that type of thing.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to that homework, the idea. So, okay, we don't want train wrecks in the marriage. No. We want to do something better than that, okay? So how about this week, you and your spouse come together and just start to have some dialogue, some conversation about some different areas. Maybe you want to start with the idea of, well, here's where we do a pretty good job. Like, I don't even second guess you. I don't have any trust issues with you in this area. And talk about why you don't, because probably if you're pretty good in that area, you've already really learned some things that help the two of you know what it takes to keep trust, okay? And then start to go back and think about some of the areas that, this is an area where I'm not quite sure on. Now, this is not an attack. So this is why we have to be able to lay this out well and listen to each other and to hear that and say, sometimes I just don't know about why you have to spend so much time on your phone. And sometimes that concerns me. Okay. And at that point, you open up the door now to saying the two of you coming together and building a plan. Well, what would be an appropriate time? Maybe we when we come in the house, we decide we're going to dock the phones in a different room, or maybe we're going to limit our own screen time. Okay. Or again, open passwords and transparency, whatever it is. Like, it's your plan. It's not ours. It's your plan. But start to go down that road to tighten up a plan to protect your marriage.
Yeah. Once you decide on the guardrails that you two have set up, okay, it's the two of you. It's not Merrill and Linda telling you what to do, but the two of you set up, then please tell somebody else. And the reason why we say that is it brings some accountability into the relationship, whether it be another couple, whether it be your siblings or whatever, just to hold you accountable. That way, this is huge. So if someone calls you out on it, it's not just your spouse and you think they're overbearing. It's something like, whoa, my buddy knows that we weren't going to do this. And so if they see you out with another woman, they're going to call you out on it too. And so that's another layer, I believe, of protection against those train wrecks.
Bottom line, your spouse is not your enemy.
Yeah.
Okay. They are not your enemy. even though they may upset you at times, they are not the enemy. The enemy is Satan. And if you don't believe that, just watch how Satan will walk through all of these different areas and find your temptations and then put flowers and roses all over them to make them really look attractive, okay? Yeah. And you'll find yourself stumbling all over the place. And so, like we've said before, we've seen some of the greatest evangelists, priests, people in great authority fall, and it doesn't make them bad, mean, and evil people. It makes them people, okay?
Humans.
And so Satan loves that, and those people are all redeemable if they choose to be redeemed, but it is the work. But wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to go down that road? And so to set some guardrails in place prior to that is extremely worthwhile.
Yeah, 1 Peter 5:7-9 says, "Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares for you. Stay alert. Watch out, for you have a great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Remember that your family of believers all over the world are going through the same kind of suffering you are. So we're not alone. There is an enemy, but there is a God who can protect your relationship and even redeem the things that have gone awry."
All right. So hopefully this has been a good show for you. And this is one of those shows that you might go, we're pretty good there. Then great. But share it, because this is the kind of show that we know. I mean, as we sat and wrote this show, we're thinking of all the couples that we have worked with and continue to work with that are struggling in these areas. And Linda and I are even having to be very conscious ourselves. We have rules. We have Billy Graham type rules in how we function in our marriage, but even in our workplace. And so we have to be aware of these things. So if you are new to Rock Solid Radio, then do us a favor. Give us a 5-star rating. Subscribe to our channel, okay? We hope that the messaging that we're putting out is something that's a little bit better than some of the other stuff that you're hearing in terms of the regular news and all the tragedy that we see in this world. So do us a favor, share the show, and give us that 5-star rating.
Yeah. So before we close, we again want to thank our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Casey's Outdoor Solutions, for their support of Rock Solid Radio and Rock Solid Families. Again, you can reach us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us 812-576-ROCK.
We would like to thank you for tuning in to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day. Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. They offer a wide selection of high-quality plants, landscaping materials, and home decor. They do amazing high-quality work and can help you transform your indoor and outdoor living spaces into something beautiful. So stop by Casey's Outdoor Solutions today and let them know you appreciate their support for Rock Solid Radio. Visit Casey's today at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana.